Hello, and welcome to episode 104 of the Pos-cast with Rabbi Shmuel Posner, myself, Seth and Rabbi. How are we doing today?
Oh, Baruch Hashem. Good morning, everybody. It's Pesach. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. Last night we had dinner here. Israel organized BU students, and about a dozen kids came. And this girl that happens to live down the block from here, she said, "Oh, I saw the Pos-cast." I'm like, "Oh, Mazel Tov." It took you that long. I said, "Boy, you have a lot of makeup to do." So it is Chol Hamoed, and even if we even if you even if you do something like that, you're not supposed to write on Chol Hamoed. So sometimes people write on top of the page, B'nei Kedushas Hamoed, like a note because of the holiness of the holiday. We're taking note that we're doing this writing because it's important. So the fact that we're recording today is obviously something that's permissible to do. It's not even though it's not according to the laws of Shabbos or Yontif, but it is permitted work to do because it's for the sake of learning Torah, and it's for the sake of the Yontif to enhance people's Chag so they can listen to the Pos-cast. They don't miss a week. They don't get disappointed. We don't want people to be sad on Yontif. Nonetheless, we did make a little bit of a change, and that is that we made up to start recording Wednesday morning, the second day of Chol Hamoed at 9:15, and Seth sent the notice at 9:17, which is unheard of. Unheard of. It should be late. So I guess it's a little bit of Yontif spirit, so he's a couple minutes late. Okay, so here we are. So we've had a wonderful, interesting Pesach until now, starting with Shabbos, of course, which was Erev Pesach. And so we had this table set aside to eat challah, and then Chani looks and says, "This is not going to work. Don't do this. Everybody outside." So we made Kiddush and walked outside. And halachli, it's okay because you can see the place where you're eating the challah, you can see the place you made Kiddush. Everything was fine and good. So we had standing outside in the courtyard there, in the patio, eating challah. I think some of the kids this is weird. I'm not sure everyone understood exactly what was going on, but it worked out fine. Then the Shabbos morning minyan. This is something because we were supposed to start at 7:30.
Ooh.
Yeah, because we have to finish by 9:30, so we can eat our.
No, I know we had this discussion last week. I'm surprised that you actually got enough people to say that they were coming that you actually started at 7:30.
Yes, that was interesting. So all three of us worked on it. Myself, Yisrael, and Mendy, because he didn't have a minyan there on the first days of Pesach because most of his minyan people went home. So we all worked together on our guys, and it was incredible. Obviously, we didn't have a minyan at 7:30, but we started davening about, I think it was almost 8:00 when we started because there was 4 or 5 people that came, and then we ended up with 15 people. It was crazy. Everybody, people coming. There was a couple of people I don't think they even really understood. One guy also lives down the block, who's not really into it, doesn't really know much about anything. I mean, he knows he's Jewish and stuff like that, but he can't read Hebrew. He's in graduate school, and he shows up at 8:30. What are you doing here? What are you thinking? And then sadly, of course, there's a couple of people that showed up at 11. It's oh man, you missed the show completely. That was, yeah. One guy, I think he knew, but I should have called him on Friday. I forgot. I didn't do that anyway. But yeah, so that was interesting. And compared to the days of Yontif, we had easier to get a minyan called for 7:30 on Shabbos morning than the other days. I think because people were told oh, it's so important and all this, So there's something when things happen on unusual, then people are okay, we got to do it. But then it comes to regular Shabbos, it's only Shabbos. No, it's just why. Anyway, it was interesting. So on that same theme of minyan and not having a minyan and making a minyan, so my good friend Nassim Zand, who lives now in Florida, well known for what does he call himself? I think if you look at for him on Spotify, one of these music things. There's nothing Zand. He does rap music. Oh, we should just have him on.
Yeah, great. Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll have nothing Zand on, and he can talk about himself. I can't believe we never had him on.
I didn't know he existed, so this one's on you.
Oh, he's famous in the Chabad house, up to a point, I guess. Wow. And I think you listened to the Pos-cast too. This might cause a little bit of shtickle. Anyway, he's one of the boys. So anyway, when he was here, he was the guy who would go out and if he needed a 10th guy for the minyan, he'd go out and bring somebody in. And he said, I don't know why we only do this when we have 9 people. We should do it every Shabbos. We should go out and tell the guy, hey, look, we need another Jew. We don't have to tell them that we need him. We only have 9 and we need 10. Just tell them we need him. Because Shabbos you can't put on tefillin with people, so you just call them for minyan. So in a way, on those occasions when we don't have a minyan, which is very disappointing and all that, it's a hassle. But then when if you actually get somebody to come to the minyan, it's exciting because there's some guy who wouldn't go to shul normally. He comes to the shul. It's great. So this happened the second day. I think it was Monday, the second day of Yom Tiv. So we're 9 people. So we went out. Now I have a new guy. Every once in a while we recruit somebody to be the side guy. It's always better when there's 2 people. It looks more, I don't know, more balanced. Anyway, so this older guy walks by, and the guy who's with me starts talking to him. I said, no, don't worry. I'll talk to this guy. We had his picture up on the Pos-cast on Newbury Street, putting on tefillin. He's an older guy with like gold earrings and I don't know, all kinds of gold stuff, and his arm was like fully tattooed, a Russian guy. He walking by with his wife and said, oh, good John. We were both so happy to see each other until I told him I need him for the minyan. He said, no, I have an appointment. We have an appointment. I said, come on. And then I said, okay, I knew that. He said, every time I see you on Newbury Street, I said, right, whenever I see you put on tefillin, so I didn't give him a hard time. Anyway, off he went. Then there's this guy going by a bicycle going by, and I didn't have time, and the guy says, good Yom Tiv. And as he goes by, I said, wait! He brakes, turns around and says, okay, what do you need? I said, I want you to come to minyan. And he's like, no, I'm okay. So he thought I wanted him literally to come to minyan. Like I was out there. He said, you're Chabad? I said, yeah. He said, nah, I don't. So he didn't want to come. And I realized he thought I wanted him to come to minyan. Like I was worried about his neshama, that he should go to shul. And I said, no. We need you. We have 9 people. We need a 10th guy. And he looks at me, really? I was surprised that he looked like he had never heard of such a thing. And then he's talking and he's using, the fact he said good Yom Tiv.
Right.
Like he knew what was going on. And he wasn't an older man. He wasn't a kid. Like he wasn't some kid on a bicycle. He's like, somewhere in between 20 and 50. Probably closer.
That's quite the range, Rabbi.
Okay, I'll up that. Between 30 and 50. Nah, 30 and 45. No, 35 and 45.
Probably find out the guy's like 19 years old.
40 to 45. Anyway, and he's talking, and he says, oh, my father grew up in Crown Heights. I'm like, oh, shkoyach. And then finally he's talking to us. I said, which yeshiva did you go to? And he had gone to yeshiva, whatever it is, some school in New York, whatever, doesn't matter which one it was. So then he came to shul, and he knew what was going on. He didn't want an aliyah. Then after Dominic started talking a little bit and told him, and he said that his father grew up on Carroll Street. I said, not President Street. Then he says, somehow 770 came up. He says to me, why did they buy 770? I said, because it had an elevator, right? Because the Frierdiker Rebbe then was in a wheelchair. So, and that's why they bought that. That's what I thought. Because they had an elevator, so we had to go up and down, because the main floor was where the shul was, and he lived on the second floor above. Then he says, and why did the building have an elevator? I said, because it was a doctor's office. He says, what kind of doctor was it? I said, abortion. And he was like testing me, and it was so funny that I'm, popping it out one after the other.
I didn't know that fact.
What?
I didn't know that's what it used to be.
Yes. It's very well, like when you walk in 770, like across the Rebbe's room, there's a small shul. Then there's a back room. Now that back room, only about, 10, 15 years ago, maybe more, they redid, the walls were blue ceramic tiles, like you would see in a bathroom. Mm-hmm. Ceramic tiles on the walls. And it's always like weird. So that was, according to what I was told, that was the operating room. So that's why, it had to be like, it wasn't it was a room that you can clean easily, whatever. Anyway, that's what it was.
Okay, this is going to bring up a question. I know this is going to be a interesting tangent, and I'm going to be careful to word this properly. So, I'm going to phrase this by first saying that the Talmud itself says that the neshama is granted to a child at the moment of conception. I know that in our religion, we have the provision of save the mother, right? If the mother is going to die, that an abortion is acceptable. But an abortion outside of that, is that considered to have killed the baby? And then the side question off of this, which is really where my brain is going on it, is does that pose an issue for Kohanim going to 770? Because if it was considered to be killing a baby, would there be a level of tuma that's involved in the area, and so therefore it has some sort of a status similar to a cemetery?
I think you've just taken our listeners for a big loop. Like, what is going on?
I think it's a valid question.
So here's a couple of points. I sat this morning preparing. What are we going to talk about? And all of a sudden, now, this is not on the list. So to answer this, to talk about this, and quickly close this subject or move on. First of all, a place where somebody died is not a problem for a kohen. If there's no impurity in the place anymore, it's not applicable nowadays anyway. And it wouldn't be considered a cemetery because they didn't bury anybody there. Right. Whether or not it is an interesting question, whether or not a fetus who was aborted, would that be considered? If it was in a room, would it then be not permissible for a kohen to be there? My feeling is that since it hasn't become a full-born child, it's not considered. It wouldn't convey tumah that way. But we'll get into the Rambam soon, I guess, in a bit, and whenever it'll be, we'll come back to that. The idea was what you mentioned in the beginning about the neshama coming into the fetus when it's born. So, in fact, there is a connection. I mean, it's what happens when a child is born. It becomes an independent being. The fact that it's viable within the mother. So there's philosophical / mystical soul way of looking, and then there's the practical. So we know the big thing about a fetus is in Parashat Mishpatim it says if you strike a woman and your fetus comes out and you kill her fetus, so then you have to pay a fine. So clearly it's not considered murder from the Torah. I'm simplifying it. So from that's where you get to the point that it's not considered murder. On the other hand, if you look at it from a bigger perspective, not the most technical part of it, what kind of greater potential of life is there than there's literally a fetus sitting inside the womb, and it's a matter of a month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever. It's a matter of time till it comes out. So you want to nitty gritty whether or not technically it's murder or not murder. It's like if you're looking at life itself. So yes, the fetus is considered to be a limb of the woman. So if you harm a woman, you have to pay her damages. You harm a fetus, you have to pay damages. But from a bigger overarching perspective, clearly, this is a life. Like, what do you think? What are you thinking? But that's that. But as far as I always looked at it the other way around. Here was a place where potential for life was taken, and now it becomes a place where it's like the home base for life around the world. Like literally, you take a look at something unholy and making it holy. Transforming the negative to the positive. What greater transformation it could be that a place that was practice taking life away now becomes a place where the Rebbe is spreading all this literal life around the world. But anyway, I couldn't believe and I didn't get the guy's name, nothing. It was like
I'm impressed that you remembered exactly where we were and you were able to pick up on that. That was great.
I'm looking at myself in the camera, and behind me there's that blue piece of tape.
I wanted to talk about that. So does that mean that you have a secret stash of snacks in your office, and that's where it is?
So as I'm going around the building, closing off places where chametz would be, there's the obvious place, our kitchen, the kitchen downstairs. We have the small kitchen near the conference, near the classroom, conference room. And I come to my office and think like, do I have any chametz in that closet? I'm thinking, I don't think so. Then I opened it up, and there's a bottle of liquor there. The tape went on it. Which reminds me always, there was, I've told this already before. There was a guy who went to school here, and he lived in Montreal. So and in those days, we used to drink Crown Royal, which is made in Canada. So I tell him, you can never cross the border without bringing back some duty-free Crown Royal. So he shows up, he went home for the first seder, he shows up the next day, and on Pesach, with a bottle of Crown Royal. Like, oh no. It's chametz, obviously. Like, I can't touch it, put it down, I don't want to see it. Anyway, that was... the Crown Royal has an advertisement. Someone actually had framed it for me as a poster, framed it. They used to do good advertising. I don't see it anymore. I don't drink it anymore. I don't see it anymore. So it's a broken bottle of Crown Royal, smashed on the ground. And the thing is, have you ever seen a grown man cry? That was the thing I had hanging in my office for a while. But it does remind me. I don't know if we talked about this. I think we did.
When the guy dropped the bottle?
What?
We talked. Are you going to you had someone who brought you a bottle and then they accidentally dropped it and broke it?
No. The advertisement of Crown Royal was.
I know, but when you said the advertisement, it made me think of when there was a different story where someone had brought you a nice.
Oh, that was by my birthday. That wasn't the Crown Royal didn't break, the other bottle broke. But what I was going to say was, 2 weeks ago was the funeral of Shmuel Fabric. I think I mentioned it. And after the funeral, I saw his wife was holding a bag, and she was talking to somebody, and she's saying, and somebody said, that's his bag. That this guy Shmuel, who had been here 35 years ago. So our custom was, every time we finished a bottle of Crown Royal, it comes in a nice blue bag. So that we set that aside for the next person who's getting prepared tefillin, it goes into that bag. So he used it not for his tefillin, he used it for his seder and stuff. And so I guess she brought it along to the funeral, and I saw him like, oh my God, I haven't thought about that for over 30 years that he mamish was on it, who had it. Yeah, so yeah. Anyway, that's enough about Crown Royal since it's Pesach. We shouldn't be talking about these things. Fascinating. So this guy came in for the minyan. He knew what was going on. I didn't want to creep and like, why aren't you keeping you? I didn't want to ask any questions. I just want to have this positive interaction. Off he goes, and we went on with our life. Anyway, let's talk about so that was it. That was Pesach here till now. The seder. The first seder was when? Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night.
Right.
So, as those that know that next door to us is a fraternity. It's an MIT fraternity. It's pretty quiet usually. They're nice guys. I needed something turned on in Yontif. The guy came in, no problem. Just good, nice guys. This Motzei Shabbos, they had a party.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're downstairs doing the seder, and outside it's like, it's noisy, put it mildly. Hani says, go out there, see if there are any Jews there. There were no Jews out there. There's no
Always
Jews.
working. Always working.
So I got there like, I don't see anybody, and they're all packed on the stairs going into the house to get in. And the guy is like, one of the brothers is out there. No, the place is full. Nobody can get in. Okay, so I looked around, and first of all, everybody is inebriated, pretty much. Most people are. And aside from that, I didn't see any Jews. I came back, I can't see anything. Okay, we continued the seder. About a half an hour later, there's like some tumult outside our door down near the steps. And Chani goes over. She happened to be walking near there. I think it was middle of Shulchan Aruch, middle of the meal. She walks over and she says, "Come." So I quickly come over. I realize it, and so there's a girl outside the door, not a Jewish girl, clearly. Trust me. And I open the door and I'm like, "Look, what do you want?" So, can I use the bathroom? So I call Chani over and say, Chani, deal with this. So I said, she said, okay, let her come in. I said, go upstairs. It's coming from Chani went up the stairs inside. She went upstairs outside. And that was the end of it. Then I think one of our daughters was here for Pesach, or Chani herself called out, I need matzah. Give me a matzah. So, we put the matzah we give out portions of matzah in the Ziploc bag. I send a piece of matzah upstairs. She comes down later and says, and this is funny. I know this is going to be, Chani will be upset that I'm saying this, but anyway, this is what happened. She said, I said, what happened up there? She said, these two girls came in. One was a girl who had to use the bathroom. And this other girl was helping her. Obviously, she couldn't walk that well. I think when Chani went over to the downstairs door first, and because somebody fell down or something. I don't know. It was a little crazy. Anyway, so she said, the first thing I said to the girl is, are you going to vomit?
That's where my thought first went to, particularly when you mentioned the matzah. But
I'm just thinking to myself, first of all, you don't ask that to a kid and think, well, they know they're going to vomit or not. Like they're so stoned out of their mind. Anyway, this girl says, no, I just need the bathroom. Then this other girl that's with her, Chani says, I looked at her and she looked Jewish. She had like a Jewish face. And ended up, she was Jewish. So she took the matzah and she said the bracha with her.
That's unreal.
And she sat there eating the matzah. And then the funny thing was that the other girl said, I want it also. So she had to eat her piece of matzah. So there you go. You talk about, we always talk about this, the idea of eating, like, if you met a person, so some people downstairs like, what are you doing? What's the big deal? I say, understand. There's a few Torah commandments on the night of Pesach. One is to tell the story. One is to eat matzah. So this girl knew it was Pesach, and she made the bracha. As far as Pesach goes, she did one of the Torah commandments of Pesach, eating matzah. Amazing. We had one year somebody came in like 12 o'clock, whatever. It came late. We sat him down and said, here, eat matzah, and then say the Jews were in Egypt, they got free, talk about it for 5 minutes, boom. That's the bare bones, but it's the core of what the seder is all about. Anyway, that was fascinating. So one of the things I was thinking about this morning was the idea that Erev Pesach comes out on Shabbos is going to happen again, I think, in 20 years. It's not that frequent. It happened not that, I don't remember, it was probably maybe 10 years ago, I don't know exactly. It was not that long ago, but it wasn't that close either. I do remember, I looked this up. It was 1981. Erev Pesach was on Shabbos. Now, my parents, our family, lives in Borough Park, which is a little bit over an hour and a quarter walk from Borough Park to Crown Heights. And of course, what happened everywhere happened in Crown Heights too. They davened very early, and again, by 9, 10 o'clock, whatever it was, everybody was gone. Everybody was done. And then the Rebbe said he's going to make a fabringen that Shabbos, which is completely unheard of. That the Rebbe, it's Erev Pesach, so you can't eat or drink anything, and it's a time that for some reason the Rebbe, I don't remember exactly the whole what the Rebbe talked about exactly, but he decided to make a fabringen. So there was this guy who lived in Borough Park. He was a bacher in 770. I think the Rebbe announced to be a fabringen. Usually the fabringen starts at 1:30. I think the Rebbe now told his secretary or whatever, the word got out, like about 10:30, 11 o'clock. There'll be a fabringen at 1:30. I think that was the timing. So this guy immediately walked to Borough Park, came to our house, and said, there's going to be a fabringen. So we quickly got ready to walk back. I remember who it was. His name is Shmuel Posner. He lives in Israel now. He was one of the people. One of those 10 guys the Rebbe sent to Eretz Yisrael as a group. He was one of them. And I also remember it's Erev Pesach. You can't eat anything. He said, maybe could I have a banana? I remember standing on our front porch or eating 2 bananas. Anyway, and we walked then to Crown Heights, and I had a good friend there who lived in Crown Heights who was sort of on the way he lived in Crown Heights, but not like the other side of Empire Boulevard, Sterling Street. Mendel Brickman is his name. So I knocked on his door and said, there's a fabringen now. He said, really? He didn't know. I guess not many people knew, and they didn't know how to spread the word. What are you going to do? Like, go screaming in the streets, there's a fabringen, which is what somebody should have done, just walk up and down the streets and just say, there's a fabringen. I assume most people were after a while, went to sleep. You get up at 6 o'clock down Shabbos morning. So that was just a fascinating thing to walk. And I do remember that at that fabringen, the Rebbe had bananas. Like, because his cup of wine was there, and so he said l'chaim. And what are you gonna like? You couldn't eat cake, you couldn't eat matzah. I remember there was bananas, and the Rebbe ate with a spoon or a fork, ate a piece of banana, and then gave it to the I think it was the Rabbi Dvorkim afterwards, spread it around where he can eat it or whatever. Anyway, that was just a memory of Erev Pesach. And talking about memories, one of the things that was really, really central to Pesach, every time you talk about a yontif with a Lubavitcher, it's always connected to the Rebbe. What was going on with the Rebbe? Well, and here too on Pesach, even though the days of Pesach were pretty calm, because generally the Rebbe, let me back. Whoops. What did I say wrong? I think I was talking my hands too much. So generally...
Yeah, you did bang the table once or twice.
Okay, I'll keep my hands off the table. So until 1972, the Rebbe would have the seder on the 3rd floor of 770 in the apartment of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So until that time, as long as the Frierdiker Rebbe was alive, there would be at the Frierdiker Rebbe seder. Then afterwards, they kept on the tradition. So the Frierdiker Rebbe would sit at the head of the table. Then the Rebbe was on one side to his right, and to his left was the older brother-in-law of the Rebbe, the older son-in-law of the previous Rebbe. So after Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, they would still leave the Frierdiker Rebbe's place would be there, and the Rebbe would sit a little bit on the side. In fact, So, and then there'd be like another 10 men sitting around the table. Now, after everybody went home and did their seder at home, they would come rushing back to come upstairs to be at the Rebbe seder to see what's going on. Some people were there from the beginning, but most people were at home doing the seder, and then would come rushing back they can be there watching the Rebbe at the seder. Now, the first night the Rebbe didn't speak. The second night the Rebbe would, and then after the seder, the Rebbe would go downstairs after the second night seder and would talk and explain the Haggadah like in a fabringen setting. No eating goes after he came, but then we'll talk a little bit. We'll talk about the Now, the Rebbe being in 770 stopped in 1972 because then the previous Rebbe's wife passed away. So they kept on doing the seder until the point, because she was there, they would do the seder there. The women would be in a separate room, an adjacent room, and the men would be, the Rebbe would be the men in one room, they would be in the adjacent room. So I never actually had the opportunity to be at the Rebbe seder, because we lived, in Borough Park. We had a normal seder, and we were on 11 o'clock start walking to Crown Heights. For some reason, we never did it. But that's what that was one thing that was, to be at the Rebbe seder. And other than that, it was pretty quiet. Like, there was no Farbrengens. There was Farbrengen the last night of Yontif. That was a big Farbrengen, and afterwards Rebbe would distribute the wine from benching and from Havdalah. That was Kosher Bracha. That would go on for a couple hours. So, and I've talked about this before. One year we drove from Boston after Pesach was over. We drove down to 770 to get wine from the Rebbe's cup. But other than that, Pesach was pretty quiet. But one thing that there was, at Erev Pesach, it's a big thing to bake matzah after midday Erev Pesach. Now this year, midday after Pesach was Shabbos. You couldn't do it, so you do it on Friday. Now the point is that you bake the matzah when the time of the Pesach sacrifice was brought, was after midday, and then already you have the prohibition of chametz. So yeah, it's like a whole, you have to be very careful. You can't be, before you start, say any dough that's going to become chametz, we're nullifying it from now. But then it's done very quickly and very, very carefully, and not much matzah can be made in that short amount of time, but they would bake it and bring it to 770. And then the Rebbe would stand after Mincha on Erev Pesach, and he would give a piece of matzah to people, give him a blessing, kosher Pesach, and give people his matzah. Now, everyone wanted that matzah to have at the seder. Could you imagine making the bracha, doing the mitzvah for eating matzah with a piece of matzah you got from the Rebbe? Amazing. So there were people that would come, and they would like get to Philadelphia, to take it and jump into a car and zoom to drive off, or go to New Jersey. Like, they had different places that were, 3 or 4 hours before Yontif started. So they put those guys in the head of the line, so they were able to zoom out. I don't know, or they would overnight it to other places by mail, so you'd get it in time for the second seder. I don't know in Boston if we ever actually got it, or get something on a plane, drive to the airport. This is before all the TSA Narishkeit. You got to the airport, you just ran to the plane, and, as long as you got there, within five minutes before the plane leaves, 10 minutes before the plane, you can get on the plane, and then you come in the matzah. So I think we Boston must have had it. In later years, I think after Rebbe had his heart attack in 77, or maybe it's even later than that, I don't remember exactly when, the Rebbe stopped giving the matzah personally. He would give a package of matzah to the guys who were learning in Kollel then, like 20, 30 guys. They'd give them, each one of them, a package, and then we all stood where the Rebbe usually brings a long table, and people come, we give them a piece of matzah. So I had the privilege, the year I was in Kollel, to be able to get the package from the Rebbe, and I held on to that package. The actual packaging itself, the matzah is long gone, but the packaging I held on to. I misplaced it. I don't know. I misplaced a lot of things, but anyway. So that was the big thing on Erev Pesach. With all the getting ready and all this, you have to get to 770 to get a piece of matzah from the Rebbe. That's just a very. I remember going to get into the Rebbe's, in front of the Rebbe. He would stand by his door and hand out the matzah. You would have to get into that little hallway out to call the little room outside the Rebbe's room. And there was a door, not the normal one that you come in the main entrance, but from the other side. And I remember one time I was a kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, and it was very crushed. People were pushing. So we got into that, and there was a man who was my good childhood friend, Levi Katlowitz. His father was a big guy. So my father and I were in front of him, and he wanted to stop people from pushing, so he's put himself in the doorway getting into that room. I just remember this huge guy. He probably wasn't as huge as I remember, because I was very little then, holding back the crowd so we shouldn't get pushed and get through. Anyway, those are the memories of getting matzah from the Rebbe Erev Pesach. And some people who were very special got a whole matzah, but normally they would like break off in like two broken pieces to people. So yeah, that's that. So the message, and even eating shmura matzah during the mitzvahs at the seder, but anytime during Pesach, people have to understand, shmura matzah is like a special thing. It says in the Zohar, and it brings it in the Ayim, that matzah is called bread of faith, or bread of healing. Like the matzah itself, like people eat matzah all year. On Pesach, eating shmura matzah, even not when it's not a mitzvah. Today's not a mitzvah to eat shmura matzah, but still the effect of the matzah, the spiritual content of the matzah. So guys, you have shmura matzah. Sit down, eat some shmura matzah, and think about what it represents. It should bring healing and should bring faith. Well, faith first, then the healing. It should bring blessing. And as we eat it, and as we get ready for the second days of Pesach, the highlight of the second days of Pesach, there's 2 days of Yantif, for everything, but the last meal called Mashiach Suda, the meal of Mashiach, the last days of Pesach are, the first days of Pesach are looking back at coming out of Egypt. The second days are looking forward to the next redemption. It should be speeding our days with the coming of Mashiach, and we should celebrate in Yerushalayim.
Amen. And with that, thank you so much for listening to episode 104 of the Pos-cast with Rabbi Shmuel Posner. We will see you next week.